Oh, I just ate, and it's yummy. Was yummy. And I'm watching another Young Don reacts why Christian conservatives love cruelty. And a while ago, I was thinking my thoughts, and one of my thoughts was, uh, I don't know how I phrased it, but the gist of it was, not that. um, just if we had a society that did not have the concept of property, just the idea of ownership of property. And so while watching this video, because I didn't really like the phrasing of that and how it inevitably would be taken and understood. Um, I want to rework the phrasing, the name of that to not ownership of private property, but the non-ownership or communal ownership of critical private property or critical resource ownership under communal terms, or communal ownership of critical property and critical resources communally, and banning private ownership of critical resources and critical property, meaning essential stuff can only be owned communally, like natural resources. We all kind of intuitively understand what natural resources are: minerals, water, air, that sort of thing. Even um, now, electricity wouldn't be a natural resource, it would be a produced resource, but that would be a critical property, the thing that generates the utility, being a power plant or whatever. Um, and there would be public housing. That would be another critical property, owned communally, built by our system of government and built by our government employees and government institutions, maybe public-private contractors, meaning government stuff would build almost all of the building, and there might be a few private contractors that would do a little bit of the work, like private contractors would. For instance, I have Venetian blinds. You might contract out who would supply the Venetian blinds, for instance. The government employees would still install them, but we decide, okay, we want these kinds of Venetian blinds. The private person would provide them for us. That sort of thing. But kind of only those little teeny things like that would be what we would do, and that sort of thing. But for most of the stuff, it would be done through the government, and basically basically all of the day-to-day non-critical, non-necessary stuff, it would be done communally. And a lot of food would be um, food stuff. You could easily do, you know, large agro on, say, a large farm could be owned by the government, like the land and stuff. Even the machinery can be owned by the government, and the people working it can be government employees, long-term contracts, good paying jobs, seasonal employees and stuff. Anybody that wants to be a seasonal employee and stuff, just working, no frill, no bullshit. And then you can have, you know, the small independent farmers that want to just have their land and do it, grow their 20 different kinds of vegetables and stuff, and sell it maybe in their small towns or whatever. But the large government farms would probably in most cases be the suppliers for the big cities, because I mean, let's face it, big cities, it would be hard to supply big cities with just a whole shitload of small farms, unless do tens of millions of people want to go back to having a, you know 5-10 acre farm. I mean, I just really don't think Americans want to go back to doing something like that. In reality, doing something like that. I'm talking about like a 5-10, a small organic farm where they don't have all this big ass machinery and shit. And people that wanna have that family farm where they have like 2,000 acres of shit. If you want to do that yourself, you want to be that kind of farmer, by all means, hire your seasonal workers. The government will help you with the logistics of hiring the seasonal workers too. All the seasonal workers will be paid more. Why not? Just throwing thoughts out there. Random thoughts. But it's based off of that beginning point of starting a society, of reorganizing society from a starting point of not starting point with the assumption of not trying to create a race to the bottom for the bulk of the country, but making sure that every person has an ability to supply themselves with food, housing, clothing, water, all of those necessities throughout their life. And it does not take um, working themselves to the bone in toil that is degrading and makes you feel like you are an indentured servant or a slave or some kind of totally unappreciated robot thing, just a tool for somebody else. In some way, it gives you freedom and liberation. To explore. Ability to create a society that is a brave new world. Yes, the brave new world. I think we have the technology and the people to do that. For a long time, we didn't have sufficient technology, sufficient know-how to accomplish something like that. And now we do, so why don't we? We don't because certain upper crust has gotten very accustomed to being the upper crust, and you simply don't want to change. You don't want to reorganize society so that it is essentially equal. Everyone has the experience, the ability to experience the experiences that life can offer. And again, I am not just talking about America. This needs to be a worldwide project. I know Americans are very America first centered. This is something that can be internationalized, globalized, and it should be. Everybody needs to start thinking on a much larger scale. I keep saying this. I'm going to say it as long as I live. Everybody needs to start thinking on a much bigger scale. And that another thing is that's why there are so many problems here in America. It's because Americans think America. They don't think world. If you think world, act world, you're not going to have as many problems in America. If you think world freedom, you're going to have America freedom. And it's not just, the reason you should do it isn't just, well, it'll help me. The reason you should do it is because, stop being a dick. Just stop being a dick. How about that? At a certain age, you should realize, maybe I should stop being a dick. Yeah, I thought your mom taught you that. But maybe you should just stop being a dick. How about that? Some people in leadership positions seem to not get the message of stop being a dick. Whatever. Tax rich, you kept rich, boobs, and like my man says, tax that ass. Tax that ass and titties. Peace.